Y'all tell me at the table what makes you happy. What makes you have the most joy?
That question, man, is to a black man, Kurt. He has to pause. Notice everybody's body language.
Why is that?
Because we often are not the receptors of happiness and joy. We're often looking to provide it for someone else.
Okay, so you hear that a lot of men say that they don't feel free to identify what brings them joy. The reason why I like Kirk asking that question is because by day, my profession, I am a certified wellness coach by trade. I am trained to ask that question in every intake session that I have with a new client. And when I tell you that every time I ask a man that question, number one, most of them get tripped up. Oh man, they get overwhelmed by it. They're taken aback. They need a minute. Or if they have an answer, it's typically centered in their family. Oh, my family brings me joy, my wife, my kids. And as a married man with children, I'm like, yeah, all right. Yeah, I know they bring you joy. But if you're all the way honest, that's not the real thing that brings you joy. It's not. It's a good answer, but it's not the thing that brings you joy for real. And I want to talk to y'all about men's relationship with joy. It's a very complicated relationship. Meanwhile, I would love to just poll the room. What brings y'all joy? I would love to know. What makes you happy? What brings you joy? And it's funny, we have a man and a woman in here. The woman in the space immediately answered the question. She knew this is what brings me joy, right? And that's great. I think that there's a few things. I think generally men are conditioned to measure worth by output and not necessarily like emotion, which is what Jay said in the video. We're typically taught to do rather than be. And when you ask a man, well, what makes you happy? It's almost like their brain short circuits. They start doing this, right? Or they default, like I said, they default to certain answers. My family brings me joy, or my kids, or like whatever, right? And truth be told, men can tell you what makes them proud. We can say, my kids make me proud. I look at my kids all the time and I'm proud of them. We can look at our family and say, I'm proud of my family. They are successful, well-behaved. If you really get into a man's psyche, you could say, like, I'm proud of the fact that my wife is beautiful. If you go deeper, I'm proud of the fact that my wife feels safe around me. I'm proud of the fact that my wife can brag on me and tell people, my man, my man, my man, right? But that doesn't necessarily make you happy. It doesn't necessarily bring you joy. That brings you a sense of pride. And there's a difference, because happiness, men process that as something that's self-indulgent, where because we are fashioned to be providers, if we're to say this makes me happy and it is independent of my responsibilities, I could be judged. I could absolutely be judged for that. If I say video games make me happy, and when I come home from work, I love nothing more than to play 2K or Call of Duty or God of whatever, the psyche behind that is, oh, you lazy. And laziness for men is weakness. Because when you answer that question, you make yourself a little bit vulnerable. And that means you have to name what you need. If I tell you what brings me joy, that means that it's a need, and that I may have to rely on someone else other than myself to fulfill that need. And most men are not secure enough in themselves to put themselves in that type of position of vulnerability. We're just not. Because you could also be admitting in that it's something that you love, but maybe you don't have access to it. Or maybe it's missing from your life and you're not quite sure how to go about getting it. And that can be very dangerous territory. Most men know how to survive. A lot of men don't know how to feel safe enough to be happy. Like I said earlier, you're proud of the fact that your significant other, your partner, your children, your parents, your family, like they feel safe. You're proud of that. But do you feel safe? Do you feel safe in your own body? You know what I mean? That is very difficult to address. Let's keep going. I think joy very easily can be dismissed and buried under responsibility. We love nothing more than to tell you how busy we are and what we don't have time for. And then from that point, you're able to like justify why you can't fulfill this need of joy, because you need joy. But many of us treat joy and happiness like it's optional. And I'm not here, and listen, side note, I'm not here to say, yo, there's a difference between happiness and joy. I'm not having that conversation today. Like, y'all know what I mean. I don't think that there is language for joy in many male circles. To Vita's point, I'm sure Vita got her homegirl and she can text or call her homegirl and say, I need this now. Her and her people can have conversations about it. And it ain't even got to be another woman. This could also be a conversation with another man, a male friend, a homeboy. You could absolutely say, yo, I have this need. You could throw it in. She could absolutely throw it in the group chat and say, I have this need. And her folks will respond to that need immediately. Let me find you what you need. Let me help you. Let me comfort you. Let me make space for you to process that. But in male circles, if I reach out to my group chat, we'll share stress. I'll tell my homeboys that I'm stressed. I'm not gonna tell my homeboys that like, man, I really need to connect with some joy. Like, how do you even word that to another man, to your homeboys, right? Or if it looks like a certain thing, guys trip. What a guy's trip really says is, man, I really need to connect with my brothers. I miss them and I want to experience joy with them. But you're not going to say that in the group chat. They're going to kill you. You know what I'm saying? We know how to crack jokes, send memes, argue Jordan versus LeBron, Drake and Kendrick, whatever that looks like. We know how to argue rap beef and sports. Again, we know how to share struggle. We even know how to celebrate certain things. Yo, my kids did this. Again, the things that we're proud of, we'll throw that in the group chat. Look at what I did. I got a degree. I got a promotion at my job. My kids are doing this. My wife just launched her own business. We'll throw that stuff in the group chat. But I won't say like, yo, man, I went for a walk or I went for a drive and it cleared my head and it made me happy. Or you won't say, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't share those things. I don't want to take this space to complain. I want to also talk about what it looks like for the men who have done the work to know how to communicate their joy. I feel like the end game of that is you've given yourself permission to experience joy. You know what I'm saying? And that permission removes guilt, and that permission removes justification, because we'll justify some stuff. Hey man, I'm stressed out, so I'm gonna go do this. Or yo, I've been wanting these Jordans since I was a kid, so I'm about to drop $200. Right? It can't be just cause I got a promotion or my wife is tripping or what. There has to be some sort of justification, but the permission that you give yourself to experience joy and experience it consistently, not just on your birthday, right? It removes that justification, and really that justification is often powered by guilt. And what Jay said, he said, yo, I've learned to experience joy by just being removed from my responsibilities. Normally, we say this all the time, like, yo, men are simple creatures. I don't need much. So usually those joys are very simple. Like Shane said, music brings me joy. That's a very simple answer. He didn't go into detail. He didn't say, yo, this particular album brings me joy. Or he didn't share his experience. You know, yo, when I listen to music, it's euphoric. It feels like a drug. Like, he didn't go into detail. He just said, yo, music brings me joy. But for most men, I think what the takeaway from that is most men are very simple. When I talk to my clients at work and I ask them that question, they'll say, man, I got a boat and I love sitting out on the boat, dropping my fishing rod in the water and just relaxing or putting puzzles together or whatever, right? Very simple things. Now, we'll get nerdy about that stuff if you open yourself up to, like, you know, inquire, right? I could tell you I love watching wrestling. Wrestling brings me joy. Not now, the product sucks, but wrestling has brought me joy for most of my life. Oh, okay, cool. And if you name Stone Cold or The Rock or Hulk Hogan, John Cena, Undertaker, sure, we can talk about that. I can entertain that conversation. But say, let's talk New Japan Pro Wrestling and Wrestle Kingdom 14. Let's talk AJ Styles versus Okada. And then I'll perk up. And now we can get into a nerdy conversation because I've found some kinship. right? So there's freedom in it, but it's still kind of, I'd say it's a little fragile. It's a little delicate because sometimes you can feel guilty about sharing your joy. So you feel guilty about experiencing it, but you handle it in a delicate way because your happiness might trigger one of your folks. That might make them mad. So you got to kind of be mindful of what you share and how you share it. You know what I'm saying? You almost have to like learn a language. Like joy is its own language. It's really interesting. And sometimes we experience joy and we're also waiting on the other shoe to drop. We feel like I'm happy now. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna break down. My truck just broke down the other day. I gotta spend a lot of money to get it fixed. I knew not to spend that money. I was gonna spend that money that I had stashed on something recreational, something that I wanted. But something told me, don't spend that money. Lo and behold, my truck goes down. You know what I'm saying? How do you manage that? Right? I think that you have to separate those things. You can experience joy. You can participate in things that make you happy. And then also like something can happen that'll just throw you off. It happens. It happens. The two are not necessarily connected. I'm happy, my truck broke down. Context is what puts them together, right? If I don't have the money to get my truck fixed, now I gotta, do some other things. But if I'm wise and I steward my money and I save it and whatever, I knew at some point I was gonna have to fix these things in my truck. So if I'm wise, I'm preparing for this time. And if I'm even more wise, I get it fixed before it breaks down. But that's a whole other conversation. Another thing about people who have done the work to like explore joy, they communicate differently. I've even noticed that just in like my walk with God. I noticed that like I can tell when like people they need you to say Jesus so many times, and that like proves that you're a Christian, right? It's like the people who they'll start a business and it'll be like Lamentations Dry Cleaning. Like what? Just call it Joe's Dry Cleaning and just like do your job in excellence. That honors the Lord. But I noticed that like people who explore joy, people who done been through some stuff and they've come out on the other side, they are way more grounded. There is, as the kids used to say, no cap in their rap. There is no performance. There's no presentation. You feel it. You sense it. You just know it, right? If somebody says I'm good, they're not avoiding conversation. They're legitimately good. They're content. They're grateful. I'm good. Good. There's no disclaimers in their language. There's no but. I'm happy, but I'm proud, but I had a great time, but it's like I had a great time and I appreciate it. One thing that it does, honestly, it creates some distance between like other spaces. It really does. It creates distance between other spaces. It changes like how you connect. Now you're not like relying on your folks in an unhealthy way. Like now these people are not pacifying you. And so now they feel safer and now they're able to show up in different ways. And that impacts the relationship in a positive way because you're good. And essentially your community becomes more aligned, and alignment is something that we're going to talk about today. Like joy is not dependent on an action. It becomes like it's a posture of the heart, and it's like, you don't have to experience it through activities or whatever, but like, you know where to go to get it. It's always around and you are in a rhythm of making space for it. And you can sense when that rhythm is off and you haven't been able to make that time in a while. And you're like, all right, let me get back to it. Vita talked about vacations. And vacations are great. Our Lord knows I need one. But so often we crawl to our vacation. Dry, our mouth all dry. We're like weak, hallucinating. Like we barely make it to the vacation. But if you're in a rhythm, if you're in a set rhythm, then okay, you know when you're going to take a vacation because maybe you're so, self-aware, like, okay, around this time is when I start tapping out. So let me make sure I'm taking that vacation or I access that joy before I even get to that point. You know what I'm saying? Rhythm will tell you. Oh, it's rhythm. Rhythm will tell you. If you're clapping on the 2 and the 4, you know when the 2 and the 4 come. Always. Right? That's rhythm. If seeking out joy is a rhythm, you know exactly where it lands. When you've experienced like a lot of stuff, it makes the small things huge. You think about people who have been to jail and like you hear them talk about like, yo, like the air, sunlight, things that we take for granted, they are like basking in because it was taken away from them. And when I was in basic training, oh my God, the things I missed and took for granted, the ability to wake up after 5 a.m. But waking up that early gave me appreciation for the morning. I was sleeping in so late that I would just take time for granted. Having that experience in turn made me like, yo, mornings is actually kind of fire, which is where I find my joy at. I get up at 5:30 in the morning and I just sit in my office and I'll read and I'll do my prayer, my routine and all that stuff. I'll clean up my office and put my shoes up and, you know, whatever, just kind of mentally prepare for my day, go over my notes, my to-do schedule, all that stuff. And so by the time the kids get up, like I got my rhythm. You know what I'm saying? Okay. All right. I'm gonna get out because we've been doing this. Let's transition. Okay.